Nationalism in Europe. Before the French Revolution 1789, Europe was dominated by monarchies with absolute power, where kings ruled without much involvement of the people in the governance. Society was divided into rigid classes: the clergy, the nobility, and the commoners, with vast inequalities in wealth and rights. Economic hardship, high taxes, and widespread dissatisfaction among the lower classes contributed to growing unrest. This unrest led to the birth of French Revolution. The French Revolution and the idea of the nation. Nationalism first appeared during the French Revolution in 1789. France was a territorial state ruled by an absolute monarch before the revolution. After the revolution, political power shifted from the king to French citizens. The revolution declared that the people would now form the nation and decide its future. French revolutionaries introduced measures to create a sense of unity and identity among the French people. The ideas of la patrie, fatherland, and la citoyenne, citizen, emphasized a united community with equal rights under a constitution. The old royal flag was replaced with the new tricolour flag of France. The Estates General was renamed and the National Assembly was elected by active citizens. New national hymns were composed, oaths were taken, and martyrs were honored in the name of the nation. A centralized administrative system was introduced and uniform laws were created for all citizens. Customs duties within France were removed, and a standard system of weights and measures was adopted. Regional dialects were discouraged, and the French spoken in Paris became the national language. The revolutionaries aimed to free other European nations from despotism. Inspired by the French Revolution, students and the educated middle class in Europe set up Jacobin clubs to spread revolutionary ideas. French armies carried the idea of nationalism to countries like Holland, Belgium, Switzerland, and Italy. After the French Revolution, Napoleon Bonaparte came to power in France in 1799. Napoleon, after coming to power, introduced reforms that made administration more efficient. His Napoleonic Code of 1804 abolished privileges based on birth, established equality before the law, and secured the right to property. Napoleon also brought these reforms to countries under French control, including simplifying administrative divisions and ending feudal systems. Peasants were freed from serfdom. Guild restrictions in towns were removed, and transport and communication improved. Businessmen and workers benefited from uniform laws and standardized measures which helped trade. However, reactions to French rule varied. In places like Holland and Switzerland, the French were initially welcomed. Over time, many people grew hostile due to high taxes, censorship, and forced military service. The administrative benefits did not come with political freedom, which caused a lot of dissatisfaction. The making of nationalism in Europe. In the mid-18th century, there were no nation-states like we have today. Countries like Germany, Italy, and Switzerland were divided into smaller kingdoms, duchies, and cantons, each with its own rulers. Eastern and Central Europe were ruled by monarchies, but the people living in these areas had different cultures and identities. Many spoke different languages and belonged to various ethnic groups. For example, the Habsburg Empire ruled over Austria, Hungary, and included many regions with diverse populations. It covered areas like the Alps, Tyrol, Austria, Sudetenland, and Bohemia, where the aristocracy spoke German. The empire also included Italian-speaking regions like Lombardy and Venetia. In Hungary, half of the population spoke Magyar, while the rest spoke different dialects. In Galicia, the aristocracy spoke Polish. Apart from these dominant groups, many peasants lived in the empire, such as Bohemians, Slovaks, Slovenes, Croats, and Romanians. These differences made political unity difficult. The only thing that connected these different groups was their loyalty to the emperor. The aristocracy and the new middle class. The landed aristocracy was the most powerful class in Europe, both socially and politically. This aristocracy had a common lifestyle that united them across regions. They owned large estates in the countryside and also had houses in towns. They spoke French for diplomacy and high society interactions. Aristocratic families were often connected through marriage. Although powerful, this group was small in number. Most people in Europe were peasants. In Western Europe, most land was farmed by tenants and small landowners. In Eastern and Central Europe, large estates were worked by serfs. In Western and parts of Central Europe, industrial growth led to the rise of towns and the creation of commercial classes that focused on market production. Industrialization started in England in the late 18th century, but came to France and the German states in the 19th century. This brought new social groups like the working class and middle class, including industrialists, businessmen, and professionals. In Central and Eastern Europe, these groups were smaller until the late 19th century. Among the educated, liberal middle class, the idea of national unity and ending aristocratic privileges became popular. What did liberal nationalism stand for? In early 19th century Europe, the idea of national unity was linked to the ideology of liberalism. The word liberalism comes from the Latin word liber, means free. For the new middle class, liberalism meant individual freedom and equality before the law. Politically, liberalism supported government by consent, meaning that the government should be chosen by the people. Since the French Revolution, liberalism stood for ending autocracy, that is, absolute power of kings, and church privileges, and promoting a constitution and representative government. Liberals also believed in the protection of private property. However, equality before the law did not mean that everyone could vote. In revolutionary France, only property-owning men could vote and be elected. Non-property owning men and all women were excluded from voting. Only during the brief period of the Jacobins did all adult males get the right to vote. The Napoleonic Code limited voting rights again and treated women as minors under the control of their fathers or husbands. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, women and non-property owning men fought for equal political rights. Economically, liberalism supported free markets and the removal of government restrictions on the movement of goods and capital. In the 19th century, the middle class strongly demanded this freedom of markets. For example, in the early 19th century, German-speaking regions were divided into 39 states, each with its own currency, weights, and measures. A merchant traveling from Hamburg to Nuremberg in 1833 would face 11 custom barriers, paying a 5% tax at each one. Different regions had different systems for measuring goods, making trade difficult and slow. For example, a unit of cloth, LA, was measured differently in different regions, making trade confusing. These obstacles were seen as barriers to economic growth, and the middle class argued for a unified economic zone where goods, people, and capital could move freely. In 1834, Prussia led the formation of the 𝚲𝚕𝚊𝚜𝚜, which is a customs union that included most German states. The 𝚲𝚕𝚊𝚜𝚜 removed tariff barriers and reduced the number of currencies from over 30 to 2. The development of railways increased movement and trade, linking economic growth to the idea of national unification. This wave of economic nationalism strengthened the broader nationalist feelings that were spreading at that time. A new conservatism after 1815. After Napoleon's defeat in 1815, European governments were influenced by conservatism. Conservatives wanted to preserve traditional institutions like the monarchy, church, social hierarchies, property, and family. However, most conservatives did not want to return to pre-revolutionary society, but instead believed that modernization could strengthen these traditional institutions. They thought that modern armies, efficient bureaucracy, dynamic economics, and ending feudalism could make monarchies stronger. In 1815, European powers, Britain, Russia, Prussia, and Austria, met at the Congress of Vienna to create a settlement for Europe. The Congress was led by Austrian Chancellor Duke Metternich. The Treaty of Vienna 1815 aimed to undo the changes made during Napoleon's rule. The Bourbon dynasty, which was overthrown during the French Revolution, was restored in France. France lost the territories it had gained under Napoleon. New states were created around France to prevent future French expansion. The Kingdom of the Netherlands, including Belgium, was formed in the north. Genoa was added to Piedmont in the south. Prussia received new territories on its western border, and Austria gained control of northern Italy. The German Confederation of 39 states created by Napoleon remained unchanged. In the east, Russia got part of Poland and Prussia got a portion of Saxony. The main goal of the Congress was to restore monarchies and establish a conservative order in Europe. The conservative regimes established in 1815 were autocratic and did not allow criticism or dissent. They imposed censorship laws to control newspapers, books, plays, and songs, especially those promoting ideas of liberty and freedom. Despite this, the memory of the French Revolution continued to inspire liberals. One key issue raised by liberal nationalists was freedom of the press, as they opposed the conservative order. The revolutionaries. After 1815, fear of repression pushed many liberal nationalists to go underground. Secret societies were formed in many European countries to train revolutionaries and spread their ideas. Being a revolutionary at this time meant opposing the monarchies created after the Congress of Vienna and fighting for liberty and freedom. Revolutionaries believed that creating nation-states was essential for achieving freedom. Giuseppe Mazzini, an Italian revolutionary, was a key figure in this movement. Mazzini was born in Genoa in 1807 and joined the secret society of the Carbonari. At 24, he was exiled in 1831 for attempting a revolution in Liguria. He founded two more secret societies, Young Italy in Marseille and Young Europe in Berne. These societies included young men from Poland, France, Italy, and the German states who shared his ideas. Mazzini believed that nations were meant to be natural units, and Italy should not remain divided into small states and kingdoms. He advocated for a unified Italian republic, which he saw as necessary for Italian liberty. Inspired by Mazzini, secret societies were also formed in Germany, France, Switzerland, and Poland. Mazzini's strong opposition to monarchies and his vision of democratic republics alarmed conservatives. Metternich, a leading conservative, called Mazzini the most dangerous enemy of our social order. The Age of Revolutions 1830 to 1848. As conservative regimes tried to strengthen their control, liberalism and nationalism became linked to revolutions across Europe. Revolutions occurred in places like the Italian and German states, the Ottoman Empire's provinces, Ireland, and Poland. These revolutions were led by liberal nationalists from the educated middle class, including professors, teachers, clerks, and the commercial middle class. The first major revolution happened in France in July 1830. In France, the Bourbon kings were overthrown by liberal revolutionaries, and they established a constitutional monarchy led by Louis Philippe. Metternich famously said, "When France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches cold," indicating that France's revolution inspired others. The July Revolution in France triggered an uprising in Brussels, leading to Belgium gaining independence from the United Kingdom of the Netherlands. Another significant event that fueled nationalist feelings was the Greek War of Independence. Greece had been part of the Ottoman Empire since the 15th century. Revolutionary nationalism in Europe inspired Greeks to begin their struggle for independence in 1821. Greeks received support from other Greeks living abroad and many Europeans who admired ancient Greek culture. European poets and artists praised Greece as the birthplace of European civilization and helped rally public support for its cause. The English poet Lord Byron raised funds and even went to fight in the war, but he died of fever in 1824. The Treaty of Constantinople in 1832 officially recognized Greece as an independent nation. The Romantic imagination and national feeling. Nationalism developed not only through wars and territorial expansion, but also through culture, art, poetry, stories, and music played a big role in shaping nationalist feelings. Romanticism was a cultural movement that promoted nationalist sentiment. Romantic artists and poets focused on emotions, intuition, and mystical feelings instead of reason and science. They wanted to create a sense of shared heritage and a common cultural past to form the idea of a nation. The German philosopher Johann Gottfried Herder believed that true German culture was found among common people, thus walk. He emphasized the importance of folk songs, folk poetry, and folk dances to spread the national spirit. In German, it is called as Volksgeist. Collecting and recording folk culture was seen as vital to nation building. Using the local language and folklore helped spread the message of nationalism, especially to the illiterate. In Poland, which had been partitioned by Russia, Prussia, and Austria, national feelings were kept alive through music and language. Composer Karol Kupinski celebrated Poland's national struggle through operas and music, turning folk dances like the Polonaise and mazurka into symbols of nationalism. After Russia took control, Polish was banned from schools and Russian was forced on the people. In 1831, a rebellion against Russian rule was crushed, but the use of the Polish language continued as a form of resistance. Many Polish clergy used Polish in religious gatherings and teachings as a way to resist Russian rule. As a result, many priests and bishops were jailed or sent to Siberia by Russian authorities for refusing to use Russian. The Polish language became a symbol of resistance against Russian control. Hunger, hardship, and popular revolt. The 1830s were a time of economic hardship in Europe. During the first half of the 19th century, Europe's population grew rapidly. There were more people looking for jobs than available employment. Many people from rural areas moved to cities where they lived in overcrowded slums. Small producers faced tough competition from cheap machine-made goods imported from England, especially in textiles. Textile production in many parts of Europe was only partly mechanized and mostly done in homes or in small workshops. In regions where the aristocracy still had power, peasants struggled under heavy feudal dues and obligations. Food shortages and bad harvests caused widespread poverty in both towns and rural areas. In 1848, food shortages and high unemployment led to protests in Paris. Barricades were set up and the French King Louis Philippe fled. A national assembly declared a republic and granted voting rights to all adult men over 21. The government guaranteed the right to work and set up national workshops to provide jobs. In 1845, weavers in Silesia revolted against contractors who paid them poorly for their work. The weavers demanded high wages but were treated with scorn and threats. A group of weavers broke into the contractor's house, destroying furniture and tearing apart cloth in his storehouse. The contractor fled but was refused shelter in a nearby village. He returned with the army, and in the resulting clash, 11 weavers were shot. 1848, the Revolution of the Liberals. In 1848, alongside revolts by peasants and workers, the educated middle class also led revolutions in Europe. In February 1848, France's monarch resigned and a republic with universal male suffrage was declared. In regions like Germany, Italy, Poland, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the middle class pushed for national unification and constitutional governments. They took advantage of the unrest to demand a nation state based on parliamentary principles like freedom of the press and association. In Germany, middle class professionals, businessmen, and artisans formed political associations and gathered in Frankfurt to elect representatives for a German National Assembly. On 18 May 1848, 831 representatives convened in Frankfurt's Church of St. Paul and drafted a constitution for a German nation. They offered the German crown to King Friedrich Wilhelm IV of Prussia, but he rejected it. Monarchs and the military opposed the assembly, while the middle class-led parliament lost worker and artisan support, leading to its disbandment. Women had been active in political associations, but were denied voting rights and could only observe the Frankfurt Parliament. Though conservatives suppressed the revolutions of 1848, they couldn't restore the old systems completely. Monarchs realized they had to make concessions, and after 1848, changes were introduced in Central and Eastern Europe. Serfdom and bonded labor were abolished in the Habsburg Empire and Russia. In 1867, the Habsburg rulers gave more autonomy to the Hungarians. The making of Germany and Italy. Germany, can the army be the architect of a nation? After 1848, nationalism in Europe shifted away from democracy and revolution. Conservatives began using nationalism to strengthen state power and gain political control in Europe. This shift can be seen in how Germany and Italy became unified as nation-states. In 1848, middle-class Germans tried to unite the regions of the German Confederation under an elected parliament, but this attempt was crushed by the monarchy, military, and Prussian landowners called Junkers. Prussia then took the lead in the unification movement. Otto von Bismarck, the chief minister of Prussia, led the process of German unification with the help of the Prussian army and bureaucracy. Over 7 years, Prussia won 3 wars against Austria, Denmark, and France, completing the unification of Germany. In January 1871, King William I of Prussia was declared German Emperor Kaiser at a ceremony in the Palace of Versailles. The unification of Germany showed the dominance of Prussian power. The new German state focused on modernizing its currency, banking, legal, and judicial systems, with Prussian policies becoming a model for the rest of Germany. Italy unified. Italy had a long history of political division. In the mid-19th century, Italy was divided into 7 states. Only Sardinia Piedmont was ruled by an Italian prince, while other parts were controlled by foreign powers. The north was ruled by the Austrian Habsburgs. The center was ruled by the Pope. The south was controlled by the Bourbon kings of Spain. The Italian language also had many regional variations. Giuseppe Mazzini in the 1830s aimed to create a united Italian republic and formed a secret society called Young Italy to spread his ideas. The revolutionary uprisings of 1831 and 1848 failed. So the task of unifying Italy fell to Sardinia Piedmont under King Victor Emmanuel II. Sardinia's Piedmont's ruling elite saw unification as a way to gain economic and political power. Chief Minister Cavour, who led the unification, was not a revolutionary or democrat and spoke French better than Italian. Cavour formed an alliance with France, which helped Sardinia Piedmont to defeat Austrian forces in 1859. Giuseppe Garibaldi, leading a group of volunteers, helped unify southern Italy by gaining support from local peasants and driving out the Spanish rulers. In 1861, Victor Emmanuel II was declared king of a united Italy. Despite unification, many Italians, especially the illiterate peasants, were unaware of the nationalist ideas. Some peasants in southern Italy thought La Talia, Italy, was the name of the king's wife. The strange case of Britain. The formation of the British nation-state was a slow process, not a sudden revolution. Before the 18th century, there was no British nation. People identified with ethnic groups like the English, Welsh, Scots, or Irish. Each ethnic group had its own culture and political traditions. As the English nation became wealthier and more powerful, it extended its influence over the other groups in the British Isles. The English Parliament, which gained power from the monarchy in 1688, played a key role in forming the British nation state. The Act of Union 1707 united England and Scotland, creating the United Kingdom of Great Britain, where England dominated. Scotland's unique culture and political systems were suppressed, especially in the Scottish Highlands, where people were forbidden to speak Gaelic or wear traditional dresses. Many Scottish Highlanders were forced to leave their homeland. Ireland, divided between Catholics and Protestants, also faced repression with British support for Protestant dominance over the Catholic majority. After a failed Catholic revolt in 1798 led by 𝚤𝚘𝚌𝚒𝚜, Ireland was forcibly made part of the United Kingdom in 1801. A British nation was created by promoting English culture, including symbols like the British flag, that is Union Jack, national anthem, God Save Our Noble King, and the English language. The older nations, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, became subordinate to England in this union. Visualizing the nation. In the 18th and 19th centuries, artists used female figures to represent nations, making the abstract idea of a country into a person. These female figures did not represent any real women, but were symbolic, called allegories. During the French Revolution, female figures symbolized important ideals like liberty, justice, and the republic. Liberty was often shown with a red cap or broken chains, while justice was a blindfolded woman holding weighing scales. In the 19th century, similar female allegories were created to represent nations. In France, the nation was personified as Marianne, symbolizing the people's nation with characteristics like the red cap, tricolor flag, and cockade. Statues of Marianne were placed in public squares, and her image was used on coins and stamps to promote national unity. In Germany, the nation was represented by Germania, who wore a crown of oak leaves, symbolizing heroism, as the German oak tree stood for bravery. This is about the rise of nationalism in Europe. Thanks for watching.